This is Talking Foreign Policy, a critical look at Canada's role abroad, and I'm Eve Engler. Today we're going to talk about the Assistant Executive Director of Honest Reporting Canada, Robert Walker, who recently agreed to pay to have charges against him for anti-Palestinian graffiti dropped. And his case, I think, highlights somewhat the double standard when it comes to how the judicial and policing apparatus treats pro and anti-genocide forces. And it also, I think, highlights the pro-apartheid or maybe the racist character of the organization Honest Reporting Canada. To discuss this issue, we have the reporter who exposed the charges against Walker, Samira Mohyeddin, with On the Line Media. Thanks a lot for coming on, talking foreign policy. And can you just kind of tell us a little bit about Walker, what Walker was accused of, and what this recent sort of plea agreement seems to be?
Sure, Eve. Thanks for having me on. This case sort of fell into my lap in November of 2024. I got a bunch of photos sent to me of City of Toronto property that had graffiti on it, stenciled in a Yiddish stencil, saying things like "fuck Gaza." Rape does not equal resistance, but it was mostly "fuck Gaza." And this was on planters, sidewalks, TTC shelters, transit shelters. And I started looking into this, and I saw that the TPS, the Toronto Police Service, had charged three people with 17 counts of mischief. One of them was Noam Lambden, 54, Brenda Hoffman, 71, and a person named Robert S. Walker, 39. Now, I'm familiar with Honest Reporting Canada, so it was very easy for me to at first identify Noam Lambden and Brenda Hoffman. I realized who they were, but I couldn't identify Robert Walker. There are about 11 Robert Walkers in Toronto. And I started looking into Robert S. Walker, Robert Samuel Walker. And I noticed that the assistant director of Honest Reporting has is named Robert Walker, but I couldn't tie it to him. So I put in a request to Honest Reporting asking them, is this your assistant director charged with 17 counts of mischief? A person who works in the area, so this is the Riverdale community of Toronto, Queen Street East, had sent me the CCTV footage of these people going up and down the neighborhood stenciling, but it was so grainy I couldn't again tell if it was Robert Walker. So they were due in court in the first week of January. I think it was January 5th. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go to court and I'm going to confirm that this is in fact Robert Samuel Walker, because it said on the court docket that he was supposed to show up to make an appearance. And Robert Walker, along with the other two assailants, were charged with 17 counts of mischief by the Toronto Police Service. And so I showed up in court that day, and Robert Walker just didn't appear in court, did not appear, and neither did his counsel. But there was on Zoom, because you can see when you're in court now, you can see what names are watching the court case remotely on video. And there was a woman with the last name of Walker who I was able to show. I went on Facebook. This is Robert S. Walker's wife. So I was pretty confident that day. And she made the mistake of turning on her video for a brief second. And after I saw that, that's when I made the connection that, okay, I can confirm that this is actually the assistant director of Honest Reporting Canada who's charged with 17 counts of mischief. So we can park that. So I confirmed that. But what ended up happening on that first day in court was that Robert Walker's lawyer had asked for disclosure. So up until that point, he didn't have a lawyer yet. And so the case again was put over to February 28th. So I thought, okay, I'll show up, February 28th, and finally I'll, see Robert Walker. Again, he didn't show up in court. I'm not sure exactly what happened on that day, but they were asking for more information again. Now, I should point out that his lawyer is Leora Shemesh. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Leora Shemesh, but she was a while back charged with perjury by the courts. She is actually representing Frank Stronach right now, the billionaire, Canadian billionaire who is being charged, I think, with dozens of counts of sexual assault. So this is who is representing Robert Walker, not a small-time lawyer, right? But you'd think that something like this, 17 counts of mischief, wouldn't be something that she would take on. She actually was defending all three of the assailants in this case. And again, on February 28th, the case was pushed back again to March 4th, when everyone was due in court. I got a notification that all of a sudden these charges were withdrawn. And the Crown Attorney withdrew the charges, and all three assailants paid $1,000 to Sick Kids Hospital
Each.
Each, and which the Crown said covered enough, the cost that it was to clean up the spray paint from off the City of Toronto property. Now, when I interviewed some of the people who worked in that area, they told me that this wasn't the first time that this had happened in the neighborhood, that it had actually happened also in October of 2024, but that nothing was done about it. The police didn't come to investigate. Nobody came to clear up the graffiti. In fact, the storefront, the store owners did it themselves. They were trying to cover it with whatever they could. But there was no investigation launched. And so really, this was 17 counts of mischief, but many of the people said this should have really been a hate crime. It should have been escalated to at least some anti-Palestinian racism or something. Other people that I spoke to had said, why Sick Kids? If they were writing fuck Gaza, why weren't they made to donate to some sort of relief agency that was working inside Gaza, some aid agency or something, so that the money could have gone to something that really benefited the place that they were demonizing, the people that they were hurting with such graffiti. So it was very, very duplicitous, and really this case just brought out a whole level of hypocrisy that you'd see in the way that anti-Palestinian racism is dealt with in this city compared to anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic graffiti.
Yeah, like on the surface of it, the whole cost thing and the cleanup, to frame it as just an issue of I guess kind of vandalism. That's obviously one side to the question, but then of course there's the racism side, well, the pro-genocide. I mean, I don't see how
Yes, of course.
you
Yeah.
can't, well, you're saying, well, there's a genocide taking place in Gaza and you're writing fuck Gaza. I think it's pretty clear that you are promoting genocide.
Mhm.
But
I
yeah,
should say I should say also that there was graffiti also saying "Long live Israel." So it was, fuck Gaza, long live Israel.
and so yeah, maybe a little bit more on the kind of the double standard here that the prosecution sort of was willing to first of all make this agreement where I think that there's a lot of cases on the postering of the Indigo 11 in Toronto would be
That's
an
right.
example
Yeah.
where they got their houses were raided. Yeah, could you talk a little bit more of that kind of double standard in the treatment of the anti versus the pro genocide kind of forces?
Yeah, I mean, we've watched over the past 17 months that people who have spoken out, yourself included, have been penalized and persecuted in a way that is unimaginable, in a way that really violates our Charter of Rights and Freedoms in this country. And so you brought up the case of the Indigo 11. These were a group of people that, in a lot of ways, had done exactly what these three had done. right? Except they weren't writing things like fuck Israel or fuck Heather Reisman or fuck Indigo. They had gone on the front of Indigo and just pointed out the fact that Heather Reisman and her Hessek Foundation are pro-genocidal, that they fund soldiers, IDF soldiers, who have gone over and fought in Israel. And they had their homes raided, they were dragged into court. All of this stuff, they've lost their livelihoods, and this was in the middle of the night. People with batons, right, battery rams, knocking down their front doors, infiltrating their homes. This is how the TPS reacted with them, right? In this case, these assailants didn't even show up in court. Not even one day did they show up. And this is the hypocrisy that you see between those who are on the streets fighting against genocide, mobilizing against the genocide, and those who are basically stenciling pro-genocidal statements all over a Toronto neighborhood, which, I have to say, the fact that this was just treated as some sort of vandalism that was parried away by throwing money at it is really disturbing, because when I spoke to people who lived in that neighborhood, they were very disturbed. And really, this doesn't deal with the harm that was done to even Palestinians who live in that neighborhood, right? Store owners, people who were having to explain to their children what this stenciling is about. Imagine standing waiting for a streetcar and having to explain to your child what this is. It was very disturbing the way that this was dealt with, particularly by the Crown Attorney.
And so do we know, did the police like charge them? Were they brought down to the detention center? Do we know, did they have any of that happen, or did this all like almost like come
This
in
was
the mail and they don't even have to show up at court?
this was all done virtually. There were no court appearances. And as far as I know, I don't know even if they were arrested.
Yeah.
And there was in this absurd way, when the TPS first put out their media release, they said that, three of the assailants were charged and they were looking for a fourth assailant who was never named. And the only description we had of this fourth assailant was that they were 4'10" and riding around on a child's kick scooter, those things with the two wheels that a kid rides around on. And the only person that I could think of, again, that I looked into was Noam Lambden, who has a kid. So again, very disturbing if this person had brought their child with them to
Their, for
stencil.
their for their fuck Gaza stenciling. Wow, that would
Yeah,
be.
yeah. I mean, but again, this just shows how the different ways in which people are being treated in our society. We are criminalizing people who are speaking out against the genocide and allowing people who are doing real harm with their messaging and with their hate to just throw money at it and walk away. It's very disturbing. No charges, right? I mean, they will not have a record. None of this will be shown anywhere.
And
And
so,
again, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
no, well, I was going to go a bit broader with you can maybe finish your thought, but I was going to go broader with the as a journalist, I know that you've been targeted by Honest Reporting Canada. Can you talk a little bit about your own personal experience, but then kind of the broader of what Honest Reporting Canada does?
Sure. Yeah, that's what I was actually going to talk to you about this organization in and of itself. As a journalist, I was at the CBC for nearly a decade. And during that time, I had 5 different action alerts sent out against me by this organization, which resulted in me getting death threats, which resulted in the ombudsman of the CBC actually agreeing with them at one point and coming after me. So I've had a long history with this nefarious organization, which refers to itself as a grassroots organization that holds media to account. But really, what they do is put a target on the backs of journalists who aren't towing the Zionist narrative in the work that they do. And so I've had a long history with them, and really, honest reporting what's disturbing about them is that they have charitable tax status in this country. And they are supported by some of the biggest Zionist organizations in this country, from the Asper Foundation, the Azrieli Foundation. They get money from the Rotman Foundation, again tied to Joseph Rotman, the Rotman School at the University of Toronto, the Monk Foundation. These are the people who are contributing to the persecution of journalists within Canada, right? This is what's really disturbing about what honest reporting does. And particularly, I want to point this out that Robert Walker did recently. There is a palliative care doctor, Dr. Kavita Algu, who recently had a campaign launched against her by Honest Reporting. And in that campaign, they took a photo of Dr. Algu's. Robert Walker did this, and he photoshopped it to give her breasts and cleavage. This is a photo that never existed. And so they created that, and, put out this action alert. After about a couple of hours, they got so much pushback that Honest Reporting took the photo down and then put out this sort of editorial comment saying, we've changed the photo because it didn't meet our editorial standards. Honest Reporting does a great job of pretending that they are holding the media to account. They boast that they have 60,000 subscribers. And what they do is they flood the inboxes of executive producers and managing editors across this country. And to the point where it creates a chilling effect among journalists, so that you start to self-censor because that they're going to come after you. And that when they do, that means death threats, people sending things to your homes. Like it really creates a very a hateful and persecutory environment for a journalist, and at the same time, you get executive producers who say to you, oh, you know what, we can't cover this. I don't want to deal with the letters, right? Because their inboxes get flooded. And at a place that is a public broadcaster like the CBC, you have to respond to every single letter that gets sent to you, right? So this is how the sort of the honest reporting works, by just hounding and hounding and hounding. And I noticed even today that you were up on their action alert. You were front and center.
Yeah, they attacked Penn Canada for defending my right to criticize Israel. And what I find striking about Honest Reporting Canada, one part is how like kind of like low down the media chain they'll go. So if like the Concordia link, the student paper at Concordia publishes something, they'll do a whole like alert responding to an article that maybe 100 people read, or I wouldn't even surprise me if it's like, 30 in some cases or 70 people in some. Um, so they really will go down the line. But I want to really make this clear to everyone listening. When you say they're a registered charity, that's another way
Yeah,
of saying that all Canadian taxpayers subsidize their budget. And they raise
100%.
a few $1 million a year, it varies a little bit, and they get support from these the United Jewish Appeal of Toronto has been one of the big donors. A variation of that here in Montreal, given I think numbers $80,000 in one instance and 50,000 other. So they get support from a wide swath of sort of pro-Israel kind of foundations, groups considered very mainstream and legitimate, but they are quite willing to, as you noted with the photoshopping instance, they're willing to play with the truth, and they're willing to go down the lying path. But so yeah, so I think it's important that people understand that this is a registered charity subsidized by all. And there has been a campaign. There has been some pushback, the calling on the Canada Revenue Agency to investigate Honest Reporting Canada's whether they comply with the CRA rules for registered charities. I guess sort of final
Thousands,
word on that.
thousands of people, yeah, thousands of people have signed up for that, right? Have written to the CRA asking for them to investigate the work of honest reporting. I mean, what is charitable about attacking journalists? What is so charitable about that? I mean, I just to go back to, this Orwellian name that they've given themselves, honest reporting. I was just looking when I looked to see on their page today, I saw you and them attacking Penn Canada, and then I also saw that they put out a podcast, and their latest episode is about Jews being expelled from Arab lands, but the photo that they used is actually a photo of Palestinians during the Nakba in 1948 being expelled from their own lands. So it's not even, their level of historical knowledge and what they actually put across is so absurd and ridiculous, right? The other thing I wanted to point out that I think is really important for our conversation is that every year, Honest Reporting puts a call out for students to come and be what they call media watchdog fellows. So, and they pay students across Canada on campuses $1,000 each to spy on their fellow students and to spy on their teachers, their professors. And with that, Honest Reporting creates a database. And so those are some of the things that they do. I mean, why does such an organization that creates this sort of Stasi-like environment on university campuses in Canada have charitable status here? That's a real problem. The Canada Revenue Agency really needs to look into this organization.
Well, I'd like to thank you for following on the Robert Walker angle to this whole story because I think that your reporting on this is part of what prompted the Toronto Star to finally report on it, and they've now done, I believe, two stories. So I think it was important to, follow up at the kind of personal level of like what one of their assistant executive directors is doing in terms of their anti-Palestinian racism on the street. And I think we'll leave it at that. But certainly, this honest reporting Canada will come up, and anyone who's interested, it's important to send an email to the Canada Revenue Agency to ask them to investigate honest reporting Canada. Thanks for coming on Talking Foreign Policy.
Thank you.